G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle. Today I want to talk about Harley Reid's contract. It's a bit of a topic that is bubbling away at the moment, both in West Australian media and Victorian media. And there is a reason for it. Harley is just become eligible for a potential contract extension. The rules are, if you're unaware, for the first time ever, first round draft picks of a given draft are all given automatic 3-year contracts as opposed to the standard 2, which we've become accustomed to. And with that, there's been a set of rules, which is that the new club can then extend the contract further after that. They just can't do it before round 6, which has now come and gone. So naturally, one of the talking points is Harley Reid's contract, and it's come at a time where he has just exploded and had 2 amazing performances in a row. I think this is a pretty interesting talking point because it's not just about whether we re-sign Harley. Naturally, we all want to sign Harley Reid to our football club long term, but there's a lot of discussion about, what that contract actually looks like. How long should we extend him for? How much should he be paid? And I've seen some really hot takes out there that I just don't quite agree with, so I thought it'd be interesting to discuss it. So let's talk through what his contract looks like right now, which is funny. Like, it does feel a little bit weird and uncomfortable to be talking about other people's remuneration, their contracts, but it's up for discussion. So there you go. So I'll run a clip here from Jay Clark, who really outlines what his contract looks like right now and how much he could earn.
Can he be $1 million player in year 3, Jay?
He certainly can. So this is a contract loophole. And so Harley Harley Reid this year earned 130k plus $4,000 match payments. Second year, 200. In his third year, this is where this new contract loophole comes into it. He can double or triple his earnings at West Coast, which could go a huge way to help keeping him at the club. Certainly, he looks very happy. We might bring up the criteria on screen. Basically, he's got to tick off one of these things. He either's got to finish top 10 in the Brownlow, there we go, top 5 in the Best and Fairest, top 5 in the AFL Rising Star, make the All-Australian squad, or play 20 games as a top 1-5 the pick. We already know he's got the Rising Star nomination. If he ticks one of those boxes, he could...
Not all 5.
Just one. He could earn an extra $500,000-$600,000 on his contract as an additional service agreement.
So yeah, to summarise, 130 grand in his first season, that's what he's on currently now, plus $4,000 a game. So you estimate he plays 20 games in a season, given he's probably going to get rested, etc. That's best case scenario. He's looking at 210 grand in his first season. And then in season 2, on the same logic, plays 20 games, you're looking at about $280,000. So yeah, what first year players and second year players are making these days has gone up significantly. There's been a new collective bargaining agreements, and naturally players in general are making more. But up to $500,000 across his first 2 seasons is pretty damn good going, and that's before he even gets extensions. And then in his third year, there's performance-based clauses as well, and you think it's a given that he's going to hit one of them at least. I reckon there's a chance he hits 3, which means that the third year of this contract, he's going to get well paid. Now, I've heard conflicting info as to how much he could potentially make. Jay Clark there suggested it could be $900,000 in his third season. I think it was Barrett saying on his podcast that it's probably a little bit less than that. I'm not too sure. He estimates roughly going to be about $900,000 a year. But again, that's the contract that he's currently on. So the next part of the conversation is, when do we extend him? How long do we extend him for? And what salary should he be on? A few different variables to consider here. He's Victorian, so we want to establish a bit of a commitment to the club. There is that sort of pressure as well. He's obviously playing really well at the moment. There is the market value element. So what are other clubs willing to offer him? Because you'd imagine they're probably already in his ear at the moment. We have to consider that, absolutely. We also consider the marketing value to this club. Now, us as fans, we don't really care about that. We don't see any extra on our bottom line, and the football club being profitable in a way is good for us as fans. We want the club to succeed, but you and I don't really care about how many jumpers we sell per se, but that will absolutely be a key factor in here. If he's generating revenue for the club, then that naturally means he's got more value, and therefore his contract, regardless of how well he's playing, will probably be a little bit inflated. I want to run another clip. This was a conversation between Tom Morris, Lee Matthews, and Jimmy Bartell.
It's amazing. There's a few of the old stages, I guess, Elliot Yeo, the players like that have joined the party, but he's almost inspired the Eagles team out of the drudgery of the bottom of the ladder to now be very competitive again.
I don't see why they can't say to him, given that the salary cap's going to go up so much, here is $10 million for that 5 years, the 5-year extension, which will take him through to the age of 26.
Well, I was talking about that there might be a $2 million player in this next 5 years when the salary cap goes up a little bit. I wasn't thinking of Harley Reid at the time. But when you talk about the circumstances of what he's done in his first month, if you could tie him up from his 20s to his 30s, I think you'd do it. And so if it costs that kind of money, then maybe you have to bite the bullet.
So this is an interesting clip. First of all, there's a bit of an insinuation that Reid has really put us on his back. I think that is, fudging the narrative a little bit. A bit of a suggestion, Elliot Yeo's come to the party. Well, Elliot Yeo's been our best player by some daylight since round 1 of this season, and Reid's form came a little bit later. Now, on the other hand, there is no doubt that, it felt like Reid's goal against Sydney was kind of the moment we switched as a footy team and switched on, but I mean, I wouldn't necessarily equate that with Reid lifting and putting us on his back. He's been one of our best players, but to extrapolate what we've seen in the last fortnight and say, okay, he's worth $2 million a season for the next 5 years, which would make it essentially an 8-year contract. I just think the logic of that is faulty. I don't think Reid has put us on his back in the way that they are suggesting. There's an insinuation that he single-handedly has lifted us from where we were to where we possibly are now. So $2 million a season for a guy who has played 6 games, and we are 6 games into what would essentially be an 8-year contract, seems absolutely bonkers to me. Now, for perspective, $2 million a year would well and truly make him the highest paid player in the game. Bearing in mind, like I said, there's a new collective bargaining agreement, which means over time, salaries in general will get higher, but he would be the first $2 million player in the competition, and he has played 6 games, and that's the part that makes me a little bit uneasy. My personal take here is, it would be nice to sign him up, but I think we should hold fire a little bit. I almost think, 8 years is a massive extension for any player, let alone a guy who's played 6 games. So I'm actually worried about Harley's perspective on this. Does he really want to sign an 8-year contract, which would effectively be? Now, it's not because I don't think he'll stay or because he wants to stay, but I'll just try and put myself in the shoes of an 18-year-old or a freshly turned 19-year-old. I don't want it to have the opposite effect, where he's like, oh, I've just signed 8 years of my life away. Yeah, I'm having fun, but it's like, I don't know. Imagine being with a girl and you think, she's awesome, and you've had 6 dates with her, and this is amazing, and then you are forced to move in with her. Like, the person might be right, you might be having a great time, but there'd be a part of you that would be going, oh, this is quite a big commitment, and would start messing with you. That might sound like nonsense. I think there's something to that. I don't want to put too much pressure on Harley with a massive contract extension. There's also schools of thought around. I think there's a study that suggests there is a relationship between athletes playing well and hitting their prime and the relative size of their contract. So generally you see athletes perform really well in contract years, then they get their huge pay packet and their performance dips. So I'm not sure if signing up Harley Reid for what will essentially be an 8-year contract at $2 million a year probably averages out to be like 1.6, 1.7. I'm not necessarily suggesting he is motivated by money, but I do think there could be a psychological downside to that. On the other hand, one thing we really do have to consider though is that there will be offers from other clubs, and we do have to bear that in mind. We can't be too, single-minded and just say, okay, we'll extend you for a year when maybe Collingwood are coming with a 10-year contract or something ridiculous. So we do need to offer him something close to market rate, but it'll be interesting to see what his, management and what he's really after here. I think the absolute maximum that Reid would sign with us is probably a contract that takes him to free agency. Now, free agency at the moment is set as restricted free agency at year 8, and then at year 10 on a list you go to unrestricted free agency. There has been some murmurings that comes back to 6 and 8, which means that it's possible by the time Harley Reid is 24, he would be a free agent anyway. So perhaps we're looking at tying him up to year 6. So would we look at a 3-year extension? And if that's the case, do we do it anytime soon? I'm not too sure we necessarily need to, but that's probably the time frame I'd be looking at it. Maybe years 4, 5, and 6, potentially $1 million a year. I mean, $2 million seems exorbitant to me, but maybe you can make it $1 million and then have performance triggers. Like if you win a Brownlow, if you win, multiple Australians in years 4, 5, and 6, yeah, then he's definitely commanding that sort of money. On the other hand, one other angle to consider here is, right, so when he becomes free agent at, say, it'll either be 24 or it'll be 26. If he is well looked after from a financial point of view, Harley Reid, let's say he's making $1 million a year up until the point where he turns 24 or 26. By the time he's free agent, naturally then, players might be making more money for a start, and your free agency contract, whether it be with a new club or to stay at your own club, is generally the biggest contract you're going to receive in your career. By that point, though, if he's on $1 million a year up until that point, maybe, he won't be that tempted by a $1.7 million a year contract at Collingwood or Geelong. If he's well paid up until that point, maybe money won't be a huge factor for him and it really will be an on-field decision. And he strikes me as a team-oriented player who might be willing to stick around at a club that has a chance of winning a premiership for potentially less money. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. And really, we're trying to forecast what's going to happen, essentially 6 to 8 years from now. But it is still an important decision for our footy club club to get right. So again, like I said, I would bide some time with this. I don't think this is necessarily a good time to extend the contract. Let him settle for a little bit longer. Given he's on a 3-year contract, there's no real immediate risk of losing him to another club or anything like that. So we can take our time with this. I'm sure Harley Reid's management will be on the same boat. And I'll be shocked if any meaningful extension gets announced now. I mean, I suppose, if they want to do it sooner rather than later, they can extend it to year 4 on good money and then revisit it and extend it further. I don't think it's anyone's best interest really to extend it for 5 years on top of the 3 right now. For me personally, I still think what we need to focus on is building a good squad around him. Okay, so that's going to be key. Like I said, if free agency rolls around at year 6 or year 8, Harley's going to be looking around at the team he's got around him, and we want to be able to supply a good enough team. Not everything we do needs to be geared around keeping Harley Reid. Naturally, we want to build a good squad for the sake of the football club, which is my priority, obviously. But there's so many benefits to be able to build a competitive and talented squad that is going to be good in 6 to 8 years from now. And that will be a combination of drafting and free agency. So I also would consider the flow-on effect of attracting talent from other clubs. So, at the start of this season, you would have said nobody's going to come play for West Coast right now. 6 rounds in, we still might finish bottom 4, but it's a bit easier to sell a future to guys like potentially a Sam Taylor by the end of 2025 when he's a free agent. Jed Buslinger at the end of this year is a decent one I want to keep an eye on. Even Logan McDonald. Suddenly, it's not looking so bleak at West Coast, and the prospect of playing alongside Harley Reid for a good side, if we can build toward becoming that's going to have its own benefits. So playing with a Harley Reid, that's a huge draw card, I think, for potentially luring talent for our list. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comments your thoughts below. I'm interested to see what people's thoughts are on this. Again, I'm a little bit hesitant on signing a massive contract on huge dollars and B, making a decision anytime soon, but I thought I would at least put my thoughts out there. So let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.